Hey everybody, welcome back to the Nyedis Anarchy series. I'm your host Adam, the CIO and co-founder of Nyedis, and today we're going to talk about how to use ChatGPT as a development tool. So what I used to do a long time ago with the IDM Rockstar blog is give full walkthroughs on how to do crazy stuff, like how to install Oracle Access Manager. But it would be like a 6-hour video walking through and how to do it. Extremely boring stuff, but massively important and beneficial to a lot of people. So I really wanted to try to get back to that and offer like, hey, what can I do now? Because like the installations and stuff, there's tons out there, tons of people doing it. It's not nearly as complicated anymore. One hot topic is AI, and how can AI be used as a tool to help developers, right? Like I've been talking about how it's going to replace developers and all this kind of stuff later. So I'm going to show you how I do it. So in this example, what I do is I take an initial architecture diagram that I drew up that has a bunch of pieces of an AWS infrastructure. And I take this into ChatGPT, and just using prompts and that picture, I'm going to generate the entire infrastructure in AWS that's actually deployed and working. So this next half hour, I'm going to show you how I do this. And I'm telling you, it's really not difficult because I go into it telling you I'm doing this as if I know nothing about AWS. I know nothing about Python. I'm literally just typing words into ChatGPT, copying and pasting back and forth. And in the end, I have a fully deployed AWS infrastructure just from a picture. And now remember, like I always say before, this is the worst AI is going to be. So as time goes on, what you see now and all this back and forth and how long it took, like an hour, that is going to be streamlined and become way more efficient and way easier to the point where eventually I very much see us just saying, hey, look, here's the architecture diagram. Create me the CDK script that deploys this entire infrastructure in AWS, and it dumps the whole thing out. We're not that far. And in this video, I'm going to show you how I do that. So enjoy. Okay, everybody, this has been something I've been wanting to do for a while, and I want to show you guys kind of what AI is capable of from a developer's point of view. And a lot of people just kind of, they use ChatGPT 3.5 and ask it some questions and get some kind of mediocre results and then just kind of move on, or they don't really know how to do the prompts, so with their minimal prompting, it's like, yeah, it's okay, but it's nothing fairly fantastic. So what I'm going to show you is I'm going to create an entire AWS infrastructure build out using just this picture and some prompts. So I am not going to write any code, and I'm not going to do anything to like figure anything out. I'm basically going to go into this stupid as if I know nothing. I've never built out CDK. I don't know what I'm doing in AWS, and I'm just going to have it tell me everything that I need to do. So to start out, the first thing that we're going to do is I'm going to take this architecture diagram that I drew up as a kind of proposed architecture that shows all the different pieces within AWS, right? So we have Route 53 for DNS, Internet Gateways. We have a bunch of different Lambdas, ALBs, a WAF. We have Cognito, API Gateway, and a bunch of other fun stuff like the ALBs with some target groups. And then you're going to need all the underlying things, right? Like security groups, and you're going to need all the roles and all that kind of stuff created. So all I'm going to do is start with just this picture, and with prompts, I'm going to get ChatGPT to create an entire CDK deployment script and build out this entire infrastructure in AWS, all with me not having to use any brain power. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to upload this picture here. So this is the prompt that I kind of started with. So I'm just going to read this out loud to you, but read in this AWS architecture diagram that I've created. So this prompt here is to start out saying, everything you're going to do is based off this picture that I'm uploading to it. You're a technical writer for a large IT consultancy firm in the US. You want to give it its role. You want to say what it is, so therefore it knows how to respond. You are thorough, meticulous in your detail of writing, so I want all the detail that it's going to put out. From this image, create an outline of all the items found and write a brief overall plan in paragraph form. In this brief, list out the pros using the infrastructure. You should write this for a CIO for a large financial institution to read and understand. So you want to say who it is, right? You want to tell it what you want it to do, and then you want to say who's the intended audience. So now it knows how to write it and what level of detail you want. So the first thing I wanted to do is say, hey, could it build the documentation around this? Not even the code, just say, hey, I just want you to take this image that I made and create the rough beginnings of a design doc. So when we go ahead and kick this off, let's go ahead. There we go. So now this thing is going to take a long time to write out all this stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fast forward. ChatGPT has now gone and created the outline of what it reads off of just the image that I've uploaded. So you can see it's already delineated Route 53, the gateway, and it even says what it is. And then it provides the brief. So this now here is what would be going into our technical documentation about what this is. And I'll let you go ahead and read this on your own because I'm not going to read this whole thing too. But what you can tell is it's highlighting every single piece of the architecture. Then it goes and gives me a whole list of all the pros of this architecture to list out, and then ends it there. So from here, now we want to say, hey, I want to build this thing out. So the first prompt that we give it is I want you to create a CDK script that will create all of this infrastructure. Now this is what's important. Ask me questions that will help you provide the most accurate code deployment. You want to tell it to ask you questions because it's not going to. Anytime you tell AI to do something, it's immediately going to give a response. So what I like to do is say, ask me any questions to get a better answer, because then what it does is, watch this. It then comes back and says, okay, here's all the questions I need answered. I want to know the CDK version and language, the environment details, all this particular stuff, right? So then very simply, you just respond back. And I just do it very like annotated, right? So 1, 2A, 2B, just using the bullets. It's smart enough to realize what that is. So I give all the answers. I want to use version 2 in Python, use US East 1, make a VPC. Here's the CIDR block to use. I give it all the details that it's asking for. And then I say, hey, ask me any more questions if you need to. It says, okay, I can do it. And it kicks it off. So first it gives me kind of a summary of what it's going to do. And then it builds out this. So now what you'll see is the first thing that it does is it dumps out code that is incomplete and just kind of shows you how you would do it. And this is kind of where I feel most people drop off and be like, it doesn't really do everything for you. It's not that great. Well, we'll get into that. So as you can see, it kind of says, hey, do all this stuff. Here's kind of all the endpoints. And it says, define the methods and create the resources. So basically it's saying, here's how you start. Now you need to go and create all these different functions for all the pieces, but this is how you start it out. And then it gives you a little review of that. Now, would you like to proceed in creating the detailed methods one by one? Yes. So, and sometimes it doesn't prompt you like this. So all you have to say is just create the detailed methods for each one by one, starting with whatever. So it's kind of learned how I talk. So therefore it knows to ask me this. But if it doesn't ask you, all you have to do is tell it, create it. So first thing it's going to do, okay, cool. Let's make the first one. So in this list, the first one it's going to make is this create VPC. So now what it does is it kicks it off and it creates the create VPC function. Then as we go through, it says this one. Now what do you want to do? You want to go to the next one? Yes. And then from here on, it's creating each one individually, continue to the next one, continue to the next one, continue to the next one. So just keep going down over by over. And also you can see it's creating the Lambda code in here. Some dummy Lambda code, the Lambda authorizer code. So my authorizer, I told it up here at the top, I'll kind of show you here real quick. So when it asked me questions is, what do you want the authorizers? So I was like, for the Lambda authorizer, create a Lambda authorizer in Python that will check if the current time is past 12 p.m. If it is, allow the user. If not, deny. So a super simple Lambda authorizer, but just using text. So you can see in the code that it creates for our authorizer right here. So it grabs in import date time, checks the current time. If it's afternoon, is authorized true, otherwise is authorized false. So the code for the actual Lambdas are in here as well. So let's continue down. So these Lambdas are fine. Continue with the API gateway. So now it builds out the API gateway incognito. And now I want it to create the security group. So it goes and does all that. And then dumps any outputs that it thinks I may want to know when I'm done. So then it says, make sure you review all this and check for any placeholder values you need to replace. So I ask it, because there's a ton in there, what are the ones I need to replace? So therefore, it goes ahead and gives me a list of everything where I need to replace with my email address and domain names and all that kind of stuff. So once that's done, I then say this, can you put all this into a single script for me? Sure. So now it takes the entire thing of everything it created and puts the whole thing into one single script all tied together. Now, what you'll notice is, and then it tells you how to run it, right? Do this. Now, what's interesting is that this script is not everything that it created. As an example, like let's just take this last one here. So like security groups. So here's the security groups. So see, this is just this one little thing, but you can tell when it actually created security groups, it was a lot more, or sorry, that's the outputs. Here's the security group. So it creates a lot more security groups. So it didn't take everything that it just created previously and lump it all together in one script. So what I wound up doing at this point is in my code is I went back to each one of these things, copied and pasted them into kind of this one big thing as a template, in here, so that I had the full script. Now from here, I then asked it, hey, if I need to revert this, what I need to do, make me a shell script in case everything goes wrong. So I made it make a revert script, which it does here, no problem. So now I have a shell script, and now I have the CDK. Now, hey, I'm on a Mac. How do I do CDK? I don't know how to do this. Okay, here's what you do. Install node, install CDK. It gives you all the commands you need to do. And then deploy the CDK. Then you do CDK deploy, and if it's broken or when you need to revert it, CDK destroy. Okay, now the first thing I said was, hey, look, when I tried to run that, all I did was paste the error. I didn't give it any more information other than that. So it knows from that error that something was wrong. So this is where I start troubleshooting the installation of CDK. And what it actually was a whole bunch of stuff, but we're going to kind of skip through this. But now what I want to show you is, this is where I'm going back and forth, and I now start the troubleshooting process of the code that it has delivered. So first, I'm just getting the CDK part to start, and I'm literally just saying, I'm running, it says to, hey, run this, I run it, I then do copy paste of the error, send it back to it, and then it tells me what to do. So this entire time, now you'll notice you'll see a lot of like prompts and going back and forth, like, okay, try this, okay, try this, okay, try this. But what you need to remember is, I am putting in zero brain power into this. I'm literally just copying and pasting the codes and commands, running, paste, run, paste, run, paste, back and forth. And then I just put the errors in here, whatever it tells me to do, I do that next. So while this is happening, and you'll see, like, I'm going to skim through this because this is where it gets kind of boring. This is where I start troubleshooting the code. So it's telling me all the libraries to install, whatever. And while all this is happening, while I'm building this whole thing, I'm not paying attention to it at all. I'm actually working on a completely different project. I have been taking meetings, I've been doing phone calls, I've been working on other code, I've been doing all kinds of stuff, everything except for paying attention to what's going on here. So even if this took about an hour to get through this whole thing to make it work, it doesn't matter, because that was an hour that I was doing other work at the same time where I could actually focus. This was literally, anyone could do this that has no concept of anything about ChatGPT, doesn't know any concept about AWS or the infrastructure or even Python. Like, literally, I'm just copying and pasting the code. So here it starts telling me, hey, here's what you need to do to set up. So what I do now, and you'll see this is common, is I'll say, here's my full CDK script. Just consume and acknowledge, don't do anything else. So what I'm doing is I'm feeding it this script saying, hey, look, here's the entire script. So now every time it gives me results after my questions, it knows what it's going to be modifying against, which is the full script. And I paste the entire script in here. You see this whole thing and just copy and paste it all in. This is all the stuff it gave me. I didn't write any of this. It says acknowledged. Great. So now it has it. Now I can tell it to do something with it. So here's the error when I run CDK deploy. So now I know it's going to be trying to figure out this error based on the code that I gave it. And it goes, okay, actually, you need to fix this method. So it comes in here, it says, fix your health check, copy and paste that. Now, you'll notice, again, it says, adjust the settings for your second, adjust these for your results, blah, 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 and it's missing a whole bunch of code that was in here. So you just tell it, write out the full function, right? I'm not even going to think. I don't even want to figure out where this goes. I don't even want to spend the time trying to figure out how to replace this. So I just tell it, write the full function. It does it. It dumps the entire function back out here, and I can copy and paste it into my code and then retry. I try the deploy again, and it fails again. Something's not defined. Okay. So now you'll see there's a whole bunch of back and forth where I go, hey, here's the code, here's what's not working, yada, yada, yada. It's just the same thing over and over again until basically it figures it out. Okay, so this last bit here I want to show is when I actually have the script done. So I'll show you the script actually. So this is the script in completion that ChatGPT has created with only me presenting it an image to go off of, and then just copying and pasting the errors back into it, saying it's not working, fix it. So you can see it has all the imports at the top, and then from here, it then creates the init to go through every different function, set up my outputs. Here's it creating the VPC with the CIDR block. Here's the Route 53 setup for the hosted zones. And then here's the WAF setup. Here's the ALB setup with the target groups and the ACLs. Here's the tokenization lambda with this is just a dummy lambda, but it has the code right in line. Here's the authorizer that we talked about before that we're going to use for authentication. And then here's just a dummy lambda that just returns hello world that we're going to use for the API gateway. We're also setting up Cognito, so it creates the user pool. And then here it creates the API gateway. I'm creating this as a REST API endpoint. And then we create the security groups, and that dumps the outputs when it's done, and this just kicks it all off. So now once this is done, I go through, and this whole setup here was me trying to figure out, hey, this isn't working. The code now compiles fine, but it's no longer, here, let me get into it. So it's no longer actually, it won't work. So I run deploy, it goes, hey, it's fine, but something's happening. And now what's happening is it's actually IAM permissions issues. So it's saying, oh, the user that you're trying to deploy this at doesn't have the permissions. What you need to do is create this IAM policy. So then a couple more times, back and forth, and you'll see it slowly adds more and more to the IAM policy. And then eventually it gets it to where I have the legit IAM policy and everything works fine. So what I'm going to show you is, first, here's the IAM policy that it wound up creating for this user so that it could do everything. So here's the SSM, STS, and then here's all the cloud formation, and then here's all the ECRs. So this is the inline policy that it had me create so that the CDK could work, and so that CDK Bootstrap could fire off to then create everything. Now, from here, I'm going to show you this. So the lambdas, you'll see I'm sorting these by modified, so there's no new lambdas because we're going to kick this off and run it. The API gateway, there's no guarantee one. There's no WAF stuff here at all. The VPC, I only have one currently. No hosted route 3 zones. Load balancer, there's no guarantee one. No guarantee user pool. And the security groups are all standard. So now what we're going to do is we're going to kick this off. Here we go. So this is now running against the code that it ran with me doing literally zero brain work on this at all. I literally started with just that picture, which was right here. So I said, hey, with this picture, describe it to me in documentation format because I'm going to have to write a design doc, right? And then I could have gone into more detail there. And then from there, I told it, now I want you to create the CDK script to create everything out. And now the important part, like I said, was having the right prompts and then that troubleshooting aspect back and forth. And I think it's safe to say, while this thing runs, because it's going to be a little bit, that if you wanted to write this by hand, a lot of us could do it, especially if you've worked with CDK before. But if you've never worked with CDK before, you're going to have to look up every single one of these things to figure out how it works, right? What's the right format and all that kind of fun stuff, where I didn't have to do anything. I got to work on a completely different project. I got to not pay attention to this at all. It generated 100% of this code all on its own. So it creates the entire infrastructure, even all the Lambda code. So now that it's running, we're going to let this go for a minute. This is going to take a few minutes to run. So we're just going to fast forward this so that we don't have to sit there and talk through it. So something else I want to show you is you can actually have ChatGPT create code and run code against itself. So here, I'll show you what I'm talking about. So okay, so what I'm told to do is I wanted to create this Python script to then take the lorem ipsum text, take every letter in that paragraph and give it a numerical value. You know, I should probably say this. Make A equal 1 and Z equal 26. Actually, let's give it a thing. I'm going to say 27, right? Let's see if it figures that out. So what I wanted to do is give it each letter a value, find the median, and then take that letter and then draw a picture that then shows that letter. Now, the point is that I'm trying to show here is, one, it's going to figure out that this should be 26. Two, it's going to create some Python script to figure out this story problem. But then it's going to run that script. So it's actually going to write the script, run it, compute the output, and then deliver me the code and the output in an image of whatever that letter is. So let's kick it off and see what happens. Here we go. Watch this in real time. So right now, it's currently creating the Python script from what I told it to do. Then it's going to run that Python script to see what the actual results are. So while that's analyzing, let's check, see where we're going here. Still going fine. And this is what's pretty cool, is that ChatGPT does a lot more than just write code and does a lot more than just write text. And there's a ton of plugins you can use to take this thing even further. But it does real-time code assessments, which is pretty awesome. So that's what I want to show. Okay, cool. Here we go. So the median is L. See, look, I figured it out. That was messed up. So now create awesome representation of the letter L. Oh, so it even generates the paragraph of what it's going to do. So there we go. Now it's creating the image. Now what's cool is this is the part that's pretty neat. It's super tiny, but it's very powerful. When you view the analysis of everything it just did. So here's the code, the Python script that it created. So here's the lorem ipsum text, and then here is where it creates the code to find the median value, and it dumps out the result here at the bottom. So it created the code, it ran the code, it found the results, then it generated this text, and then it created this awesome image to represent the letter L as a majestical lighthouse standing on a rocky cliff. So ChatGPT is awesome for a lot of different reasons, and you can use it for more than what you're probably even thinking. So that was just one other cool little feature that I wanted to show you. Now let's get back to our deployment. While we're still waiting, I figured, you know what, I'm going to show you one more thing. I want to take this exact same prompt because I want to show you the difference between 3 and ChatGPT 4. So this is 3.5, which is the free version that everyone else has access to without paying for it. If we run the prompt, it's way faster in doing it, but that is not nearly as an efficient script that it just ran before. So yeah, so there's a script, but not near as cool. And we can't upload images and all that kind of fun stuff either. What I have found when doing this is that the code that it generates it'll work with like some finagling, but it's not really that great. So the difference between ChatGPT 3 and ChatGPT 4 is huge. So if you really want to play with this and use this as a tool, you have to be subscribing to the version 4. The version 3.5 just does not cut it. Okay, awesome, we're done. So everything's been created. So now we're going to go back to AWS and see what we got. Here's our policy. Okay, our lambdas. Let's refresh. There we go. Here's our lambdas. So let's go in and check our hello world one. Let's see. Here's the authorizer one. And here's the dummy lambda. So here's our authorizer. Let's check out the code. Yep, there we go. There's that. That's pretty awesome. There's our lambdas. Now let's check our API gateway. We now have refresh. There's our API. And we have our hello method. Let's see, is this actually deployed? Yeah, looks deployed too. Okay, cool. So this is done. So it's created our gateway, our web ACL. Let's see what we got here for our WAF. There's our WAF. There's some dummy rules for us. Nice. Our VPCs. There's our new VPC. Very cool. All of our information there. Resource map. Everything's, oh, look at that. All our subnets, routing tables, our network connections, all created. Very nice. Okay, our host is zones. That's been created as well with all the DNS entries. Great. Our load balancer. Here's our load balancer. Our ALB has been created. And, oh, it even created the target group. There's our target group here. And now our user pool. There's our Cognito user pool. And lastly, our security groups. Yep, there we go. Here's our inbound rules. We're just letting port 80 in, and cool. There you go. So in zero brain power and literally just starting from a picture, we have created the full CDK infrastructure as code scripts and deployed it into AWS in about an hour with me just copying and pasting back and forth into ChatGPT. So this is, to me, the real power of what ChatGPT can offer. And to show you like kind of what I was really using this for more than anything else here, you know what I'll do? I'm going to roll this back now just to remove everything with the script that it made, right? Kick that off. So we'll let that destroy everything. Now you'll see there's all these BC here. So all of these functions, all these Lambda functions are for the Breachcast app that we have coming out soon. And I made all of these Lambda functions, which then tied to this API gateway with all these API gateway endpoints. Everything was created using ChatGPT and just doing that similar process, saying, hey, here's what I want you to create, and here's the code that, that I want you to make for me. Now, one thing that I noticed here, which I'll show you that has been massively beneficial for me, let's see if I can pull this up for you 1 second, is I did this in here too, actually, is I like to give GPT a example code to start with. And whenever you do that, it really makes whatever it generates for you way, 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 way better. Way, way better. Here's an example of a Python script that works. Use this as an example to modify my code. And then I paste it. So this was a GitHub example from AWS on how to use the AWS CDK Python SDK. So I pasted this as an example. And then from there, it rewrote my script based on the examples provided. So what I've found is that if you create one really good script, so like in the example of my breachcast lambdas, like what I would do is I'd generate one lambda where I would fine tune it and make it work perfectly, exactly how I want, how I want the code laid out and all the functions. And then what I do is I take that code, paste it back to ChatGPT, and I say, hey, this is the lambda function called XYZ. Here is the code. Consume and acknowledge. And it just says acknowledge. Then what I do is I say, use that lambda function as a template and create me a new lambda function that does XYZ. Then what it does is it will take all the same configuration, all the same environment variables, the database connectivity issues, like all the stuff that I have, and then create a whole new lambda for a whole new REST endpoint to do something completely different. But I don't have to retell it, hey, here's the database to connect to, hey, here's the whatever to do. So if you can give it a working piece of code and say, hey, use this as a template for the next thing that you create, it works wonders. So what I did I basically made the entire breachcast backend API infrastructure in a weekend. It made all of these lambdas that you see here. It made the API endpoints for all of them. And it made the database infrastructure, the tables, the fields, everything that these lambdas then rely on for the storing of the data. Plus, I have a front end that I created for the breachcast app as an admin portal where I can go in and update and remove information for all of these things to work on. So it created the HTML website that's fronted by the API gateway, these lambdas that are fronting for the APIs for the mobile app to use, and it did the whole thing literally in a weekend. All of these functions and everything that it does, I got the whole thing, and it wasn't even like a solid weekend. I would say total development time is probably around 12 hours of work. So when you really get good with your prompts and you can go back and forth and use this copy paste just to debug stuff, it makes life super simple. So while let's say I'm debugging this, CDK script that's going back and forth saying, oh, look, it seems like a lot of work, but I'm not really doing anything. So while it's debugging this, I can get a lot of other work done. So I hope this helps you guys show what's possible with GPT from a development standpoint. It's super powerful as long as you use your prompts right. And you just keep telling it, give me more, or tell it what to do. So with that, the possibilities are endless. But I hope this kind of opens it up and shows you guys what's possible. And it makes you think like, oh, maybe I'm going to go try something else with this thing and do something cool with it. So if you do something awesome with this, let me know. I'd love to see it. If you have really cool prompts or other tricks that you've used GPT for to help you from a security standpoint or from a developer standpoint, I'd love to hear it too. Obviously, I'm just figuring this stuff out on my own. I am not an expert in this at all. This is just what I've kind of figured out and how I best use this to my advantage to cut down on my development tasks. So I hope this helps you guys out. So that's how I did it. It's not terribly complicated, as you can see. And even though it took so when I say a long time, maybe an hour or more, it didn't take any of my brain power. I was literally working on other stuff and I would turn around every once in a while when it was done generating and then be like copy, paste, run, copy, paste, enter, let it generate, go back to doing stuff. So it really took zero brain power for me to do that entire thing. So I didn't have to understand what was happening at all. Thankfully, it all worked. But this is just what I wanted to show you is like this. It can be a great tool to help you with development. Right now, it's really a great tool to help get started, right? It builds out like that template, that initial infrastructure. Like from there, I can then take that and then dive into the weeds and make it way more robust and actually troubleshoot to make it do what it's supposed to do and find any missing pieces, whatever. But you can already see just that little bit there alone saves me tons of time and effort that allowed me to work on something else at that time. So this is where I see ChatGPT really helping us out now, and I really think that this is a tool that you should adopt. Like I said before, you either need to learn it, adopt it, or pivot. So while I'm learning it, I'm definitely adopting it. I'm definitely not pivoting away, and I'm going to be leaning into AI full force, and I think you should too. So hopefully this helps you guys out. If you have other tips and tricks that you use for ChatGPT that's helped you make your development process or your engineering even better, I'd love to hear it. I also use it for checking for code vulnerabilities. Drop in some code, say, hey, how can I make this code more efficient? And are there any vulnerabilities in here? And it will find them. It's pretty crazy. So it's unlimited uses. It's just every day we find new ways to use ChatGPT. This one has just been the most powerful using these prompts that I've kind of figured out on my own. So please share what you're doing, because I want to learn more just out of pure, selfishness. So I hope this guys helps you out. I'll see you guys around later.